Yeah. 3-6, mafia.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey, yeah. Whoa.
Say what?
Whoa. Yeah. 3-6, mafia.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey, yeah. Whoa.
Say what?
Whoa.
3-6 Mafia. It's going down. Y'all know what time it is. We ain't playing with you. In the club, in the street.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to No B.S. on this glorious Wednesday night. Welcome to Season 3 of Episode 22 of this podcast with me and Isaiah tonight. Isaiah, we're going to get underway. How are you tonight?
I am doing great. Daylight savings time is obviously kicking my butt. I'm not used to the whole time change yet still. So that is, a bit of a steep adjustment. But it's been going great. It's been going really, really well the last couple of days. College football playoff rankings came out. So we're going to have a lot of stuff to dive into. I know with the rankings and also NBA is going on, and my Lakers had a heart-stopping win that nearly killed me on I think it was Monday when they played the Hornets and they were up like 10, and I was like, yeah, the Lakers are gonna win. And then 2 minutes later, I turned back on the TV, they're up by 2. So can the Lakers please stop giving me these like heart-stopping games, man? I'm too young. I'm too young for all this stress, man. I don't want to be graying up here like other people have been already.
All right, Isaiah. Well, we got to see how the Lakers fare as the season continues in the world of NBA. But I know what our fans really came here for tonight is our reaction to the college football rankings. So could you please throw that up? I'll lump to the first two questions together, kind of, break it down. So as we can see, ladies and gentlemen, that the top 4 teams are not a surprise after Michigan State loss to Purdue. It kind of justifies itself where it is. Obviously, it's a head scratcher to why Alabama is still ranked 2 till this date, but every other team and so far in this ranking seems in the right spot. Though Michigan and Michigan State, I could beg to differ, could switch around. But at the same time, they lost to Purdue, but Michigan State beat Michigan. So we could have a debate about that and try to figure out what truly ended up happening. Also, with Wake Forest losing, it kind of, shimmied them down a little bit in the rankings, down to 12. But that's like the real big things that ended up happening. I wanted to go to Isaiah. What do you think some of your big takeaways of this week and some of the, I would say, tough heartbreak losses that, some of these top teams face this week?
Well, before I get into like the rankings and my thoughts, I'm gonna answer your question, Trevor, about the top like upset or the shocking result in Week 10. We had a lot of upsets. We had Purdue taking down number 3 Michigan State. We had Florida getting completely thrashed by a rebuilding South Carolina. Then we had North Carolina beating Wake Forest in a very entertaining shootout game. I think it was like 55-52. That was the end result of that game. It was a high-scoring affair. It was a really great game. And then we had LSU, which has been terrible all season long. Their defense has been getting gashed by everybody. Their offense has not been able to do anything against the opposing team's defense. And they were depleted, meaning that they were so injured that on their bye week, Ed Orgeron said that if they didn't have a bye week last week, they would not have been able to play against whomever that they would have played. They would have had to forfeit that game. So they were depleted, and somehow, some way, they go into Tuscaloosa against Alabama, a high-scoring top number 2 team in Alabama, and they only lose to Alabama by 6 points. I mean, that was crazy, man. I don't know how that managed to happen. Obviously, you can look at maybe maybe LSU or Alabama played down to competition against LSU, thinking like LSU's record is terrible. They're depleted right now. So we're going to have an easy game. We're just going to walk all over them. And LSU said, not so fast. And, you know, they kept it really competitive. I mean, they had multiple chances to win that football game. There was once where in the fourth quarter, they were down 6 early in the fourth, and they had the football, I believe, first and goal at the Alabama 8-yard line. So, and if they didn't get points off that, but if they someone would have gotten points off that or scored a touchdown, we would have been talking about a whole different ball game, and maybe Alabama ends up losing that football game with how sluggish that they were on offense. So if you're a Crimson Tide fan, I know my guy Landon Hammonds is a Crimson Tide fan, there's cause for concern because – let's face it, Trevor, Alabama, they're not playing to win games. They're playing to try to – every game that they play, it's about how do they match up with Georgia, who they are ultimately going to meet up with in the SEC Championship. And we're looking at how Georgia's playing right now. Georgia is playing incredible football. I believe they've won each of their games by 17-plus points. They have not even had an opponent come close to beating the Georgia Bulldogs. They haven't even had an opponent like come close to a single digits against Georgia. That's how lopsided Georgia Bulldogs games have become. Alabama needs to be on their A game to beat Georgia. They cannot be looking like how they did against LSU or how they looked against Tennessee the week before the LSU game, or they cannot be looking like how they did against Texas A&M if they want to beat Georgia, because Georgia right now I think is the most complete team in college football. So I think that was definitely one of the big surprise of the Week 10 schedule. I don't think it was. I'm not surprised at I'm surprised more of LSU keeping it close, because I for sure thought LSU was going to lose by more than 28 points because of how bad LSU has been playing this season. But in terms of the rankings are concerned, Trevor, the top 4, Trevor, I'll say this. This is the year of Isaiah. And what do I mean by that? Georgia was my pick to win the SEC and also to win the national championship. Before the season started, I said, Trevor, John, and everybody else on our network, this is Kirby Smart's best team at Georgia. Put all your money on the Georgia Bulldogs to win the national championship, because if Kirby Smart doesn't win it with how great of a team he's got in Athens, well, then he might as well just retire from coaching, because he's not going to win a national championship at Georgia if he can't win it with this team. And they certainly have backed up my words. Georgia at number 1 is well deserving. I think Georgia right now is the cream of the crop in college football. I think it's Georgia, and then it's everybody else in college football. Alabama being a number 2, Oregon being a number 3, my team that I picked to win the Pac-12, so happy for the Ducks, and Ohio State at number 4. And the reason why I'm happy, Trevor, that Ohio State is at number 4 is because if the playoffs started today, and if Georgia wins the SEC, we will get our dream matchup that we've been talking about here on the MI6 Sports Network for the last 3-4 years, and that is Georgia versus Ohio State in the first round. And I would hope to get tickets to that game, because that's a matchup that I've been looking forward to and dreaming for a long time. And you have Oregon and Alabama as well in the middle. But I think the top 4, I don't really have a problem with it. The only problem I may have is Ohio State, because Ohio State looks sluggish against Nebraska. They only won that game by 9 points, I believe. It was really close down to the wire, down in late in the fourth quarter. It was still a game. I think if I were the committee, I would not have moved Ohio State from 5. But also, you got to take into consideration, if you're not going to move them from 5 up, and you're not going to move Cincinnati, Michigan State lost. Oklahoma was on a bye. Wake Forest lost. Michigan State, they lost as well. So you can't if you don't move them up, who are you going to put into that number 4 spot? So I think that's the only reason why they put Ohio State in. But I don't think you should be, rewarding teams for having a bad game or a sluggish game. But that's just my opinion. And the other part of the rankings that I kind of have an issue with is Michigan over Michigan State. And Trevor, you might be super shocked at that, considering the fact that I love me some Jim Harbaugh and I love the Michigan Wolverines. But I'll say this. The committee, in its 5 years of existence, they have said and they've maintained a standard for head-to-head competition. Well, I get Michigan State lost and you had to move them down. But Michigan State beat Michigan just last week. So if you're going by head-to-head, then how can you even fathom putting Michigan ahead of Michigan State? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't understand the thought process behind that, but hey, it is what it is. But that's my thoughts on these rankings.
I guess to look on it, looking at Ohio State and them playing a close game against Nebraska, if you look at Nebraska's schedule, they played one of the toughest schedules in college football this year. They faced Michigan, they faced Michigan State, and they only lost to them by 3 or a 1-score difference. So you can't really sleep on Nebraska because, A, they're just having a very tough schedule to just go through. But at the same time, if they flip those 1-score differences around, they will probably be in the top 10 if they flip some of those games around. So that's just where that program's at, though they're just going through, bruises and all that stuff, bumps and bruises this season. But hey, maybe next year they'll bounce back to beating the Nebraska of like the early 2000s. Who knows? Or like the late 90s. But at the same time, Georgia, I would say, still kind of one-dimensional. They're still heavy relying on the run game. I haven't really seen them go over the top with their wide receivers. And I don't think the quarterback has that capability to zing it and go over the top on the defensive backs. But when you're facing Ohio State, they have those explosive wide receivers who will beat you deep. So, like, all CJ Stroud has to do is just literally hit the wide receivers in stride, and the wide receivers at Ohio State will literally dominate because they're the best in the country. Like, literally every announcer has said it, like, Ohio State's wide receivers are the best in the country, and you just need a quarterback to get them the deep ball, and CJ Stroud can hit them with the deep ball. But when you look at Georgia, they're having a quarterback controversy. So who's going to start by the time we get to the end of the season? And can they hit that deep ball when the game's on the line? I probably don't think so. But we have to see how Georgia develops with the rest of the season. Are they going to continue to rely on that run game as it's been working so well for them? But when you face a team that can score you on the next drive, does the run game go away and you have to go by air? That's going to be the real question for Georgia as they advance the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, that's why they will need JT Daniels for the playoffs. I think that's JT Daniels for me is the key to Georgia winning the national championship. If Kirby Smart decides, hey, I'm going to stick with Stetson Bennett the rest of the way, as much as I love the Georgia Bulldogs, Georgia's not winning it with Stetson Bennett. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Stetson Bennett is a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. JT Daniels has a great arm. He's got great athleticism. Even though he's not mobile, he's got great vision in the pocket as well. So you need JT Daniels for the playoffs. He's the guy that I think will take you over the top. I think Stetson Bennett, you can ride with him right now. You could do what you did against Missouri and have Stetson Bennett start the game, and then when it's a blowout, put JT Daniels in. You could do that so you can get JT Daniels the reps that he needs to shake off the rust from him not having played a lot this season because of injury. But when the playoffs roll around, because we know that, Georgia, I don't think they're going to lose to Tennessee. They're certainly not going to lose to Charleston Southern, though, Trevor, I have a feeling that, like, with me saying all this stuff, that I had jinxed it, and now Georgia's probably going to lose to Charleston Southern or something like that. But they're probably not going to lose to Georgia Tech. They're going to have an undefeated regular season. I think that it's going to come down to the SEC championship game, and it's going to come down to the playoffs against most likely probably against either Oregon, Ohio State, and definitely you're going to face Bama, both in the SEC championship and possibly in the national championship game as well. But you need JT Daniels for the SEC championship against Bama, and you need him for when you play against Ohio State or Oregon or even Cincinnati for that matter, or even Oklahoma that has high-powered offenses. That's when you need JT Daniels. But until then, I think Georgia can keep doing what they're doing. But Kirby Smart, you already messed up one quarterback controversy. You picked Jake Fromm over Justin Fields. Well, you have an opportunity to correct your mistake from before, so put in JT Daniels come playoff time.
Well, let me read some comments before we move on to another part of our college football segment. But from our producer, Stephen H. Wang, there's no reason for Michigan to be ranked ahead of Michigan State. I think we agree with you on that. If you look at head-to-head, you have Oregon over Ohio State, but you completely flip-flopped at Michigan over Michigan State. I don't think you can do that. I think you either move up Oklahoma, but they're in a bye, so it was like a weird spot. Like, how far do you move Michigan State down for losing to Purdue and stuff like that? So I don't agree with that, but at the same time, Michigan State did get blown out by Purdue. So there's also that in that type of fashion. Also coming in, we got, Corey. He says, "What's up, Isaiah from Minnesota, Roseville." We got Casey King saying, "Good evening, guys." We have Todd saying, the Bearcats have to be in there, but Ohio State has the name. I think that's like a valid argument what the committee puts in because it's about viewership, Isaiah. That's what's probably going to come down to. Who's going to watch, a semifinal playoff game with Cincinnati, but when you can have our Ohio State-Georgia semifinal playoff game,
That is
so
true.
There's probably some of that going into the rankings as well. What could get the most, viewership versus who truly deserves to be in there as a factor as well.
I mean, Trevor, let's face it, no disrespect to Cincinnati, but for me and you and Steven as well, if it's either Ohio State, Georgia in the first round or Georgia, Cincinnati, who would you pick? Like, come on, man. I think we both would pick Ohio State over Georgia. But like I said this with Cincinnati last week, I don't think Cincinnati will make the playoff. They will not be put in the top 4 because just the committee's hatred against the group of 5. Like, until I see with my own 2 eyes, the committee puts them in the top 4, I don't think it will happen. I have a bad feeling, Trevor, that somehow, some way, even let's say Cincinnati finishes undefeated, right? They finish undefeated, they win their conference, they still won't put them over anybody else in the top 4 just because I just think that the committee views like the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, ACC, and the group of 5 is like down here. Like, they'll probably put a 2-loss team over Cincinnati, an undefeated Cincinnati, for what it's worth.
I guess the question is, it's who's the 2-loss team at the end of the day. And it's very likely because literally the top teams here could lose again. But the 2 highest candidates I'd say would lose again are probably in Alabama or in Oregon. Those are the 2 top teams I could see losing again unless Ohio State loses in a trap game. But besides that, those are like the only possible scenarios. Once that second loss rolls in, and it kind of improves, I would say, Cincinnati's chances of getting in. Because let's say Alabama loses to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and then A&M goes to the SEC title game, depending how they fare against Ole Miss this weekend. But let's say A&M goes in. If A&M loses to Georgia in the title game, you're going to have to put Cincinnati in the 4th spot. Unless, Oklahoma rises through the ranks and throws in. But I doubt the committee is going to jump them from like 8 to 4. I don't think they're that aggressive on that sense. But who knows? The committee may do something wild and make that huge leap and put Oklahoma in there. At the same time, Oklahoma hasn't really had a good track record in the playoffs either. So there's also that thrown into a factor as well. Also, Casey King says he's not sitting with Oregon being there, but like we said, there's going to be, Ohio State. They're looking at that Ohio State victory. I think that's what's carrying a lot of weight for Oregon. If Ohio State would lose again, that, may sway the committee, go with another way. Then we have another one from Casey King. He's going to be, crazy more upsets last week, and he can't wait to see more coming in the final weeks. I think we're going to all agree with that. It's going to come down to the wire, and especially the last week of the season with rivalry week. That's where things are going to be taken up a notch and kind of shift things around for the league, I would say. Another one from Todd. How do you guys think, Bryce Young is from the stance of Tua and Jones, and can he surpass them? I think he says he thinks so. I say you got to put up the numbers, which he's been doing, but at the same time, like you said, Isaiah, LSU only lost by 6. So it's like, if you look at the other two quarterbacks, they were steamrolling them besides, the year that Joe Burrow got hot. But like, at the same time, you got to look at those Alabama teams in general. I would say this is probably one of the weaker Alabama teams we've seen within,
Alabama's vulnerable for sure.
Yeah, and at the same time, you got to throw in that, last year's Alabama team, I could say, is in the top 3 that Nick Saban ever coached, offensive-wise. But if you look at defensive-wise, it's got to be the era where Jalen Hurts was at quarterback. So it's like, it's very different scenario on how you view which Alabama team is better based on the talent and what they're going through. So I don't think he's there just yet. Maybe if he turns it around and beats Georgia in the SEC title game, then yeah, I can change my opinion and saying, yeah, he did it because he was able to do that. But like, at the same time, there's standards and you got to go on and surpass it. Yep. Also, unless you want to add something to it, Isaiah.
Well, I think I will agree with you by saying that Bryce Young, I think right now you got to say that in terms of the standards at Bama, right? Because he's talking about Tua, Mac Jones, and now Bryce Young. I think you got to put Tua and Mac Jones. You could either one or two. I don't know, because both of them won championships. Both of them put up great numbers there. You could definitely argue all day long which one is number one, best quarterback at Alabama. You might be able to throw in Jalen Hurts there, but I would say not ahead of Tua or Mac Jones, because those two guys won championships and Jalen Hurts fell short. And I would say probably when you think about it, I would say Bryce Young is third right now, because let's not forget, he's only a freshman. He's still got ways to go at Alabama. He's probably got a couple of more years left there in Tuscaloosa. And, he's putting up the numbers, but numbers, people at Alabama doesn't care about numbers. They care about championships. They care about winning football games. And it's definitely going to come down to if he wins that championship. Like, if he beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, this historically great Georgia team, wins the SEC, and leads one of, like, Trevor, I think you would probably agree with me, leads a Alabama team that I think is one of the weaker Alabama teams of the last few years to that national championship, then I think you could also put him up there as well.
For sure. Also, he says this is why, a 12-team playoff bracket, should exist. Again, at the same time, I know I talk with Steven and everyone else on the MI6. Expanding it to a 12-team playoff bracket may not be enough to justify it. Because we look at some years, the 1 and 4 seed matchup has been blowout some years. We haven't really got too many close games from the 1 and 4 seed. Now imagine if it was the 1 and 12 seed. That's just an easy win. If a group of 5 accidentally slips into the 12th spot, how do you think they're going to fare against, an Alabama team that was elite that year? It's like there's a certain cutoff point where it's like you can argue that the top 6 could potentially beat each other. But once you expand past that, it gets harder to justify it because the talent's just not there. Like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, recruit all these 5-star recruits that make them dominant. But if you go to, like, let's say the 4th best team in the conference, they don't have 5 stars. They may have a few 4-star athletes, but the rest are majority 3-star athletes. And that kind of like hinders their ability to compete against these top teams. Yes, they can pull up upsets, but how likely are those upsets in the first place? On top of that, we have Todd going in. Says, Cincinnati's being screwed over, and their quarterback has been in the program quite a while, and he can do pretty much it all. But at the same time, it's their schedule. The committee's not convinced on it. They're playing teams that are, not as strong, close, and the top teams don't play those teams close. And that's why the committee is kind of leaving them out in this case, I would say. Also, more stuff from Steven. He says, watch out for Penn State over Michigan upset this week. Penn State is a 1-point favorite at home and is much better than their record indicates. I kind of agree with that. Interesting observation. Penn State has a head-to-head advantage over Auburn, and Minnesota has a head-to-head advantage over Purdue, yet both teams are unranked. Ohio State, from Steven, Ohio State has proven to be the better team than Cincinnati by a differential, and the opponent they have faced, Ohio State beat Tulsa by 21, and Cincinnati beat Tulsa by a smiley face and cool sunglasses. Brenda Herrera, he says, what's up, Trevor and Mr. I? I think the Jags will make the playoffs. Oh, man. I guess we can answer that now. Isaiah, do you think the Jags are going to make the playoffs? I think not.
I don't just think that they will make the playoffs. I have them winning the division still. I mean, like I told Ace last couple nights ago in Wild Sports Talk, the Jags have risen from the dead.
On top of that, we have, more from Steven. Are we sure that Alabama gets left out if they lose a close one to Georgia in the SEC title game? That is debatable, but at the same time, they lost to A&M.
That might be a two-loss team right there. If Bama loses by like 3 to Georgia, the SEC championship game,
I could see that's how it happens. But again, do you put them as a 3? Because they don't want a rematch.
I think they would. I think they would put them as a 3 just because I think that the committee values the SEC higher than any other conference combined right now in college football. So I think they would put them as a 3. Also because, like you mentioned, Trevor, you don't want that rematch between Alabama and Georgia because who wants to see Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship game and then go right ahead a month later, see Alabama and Georgia again in the first round? If you do Alabama and Georgia, it's got to be in the national championship game. You don't want to see rematch back-to-back games.
Mm-hmm. And then from Steven, will Cincy get in if they win out or a 2-loss team ahead of them lose? I think we kind of answered that. If Alabama plays Georgia close, then Alabama will get in. If it's a blowout, then Cincinnati will most likely fill in that 4th spot. But then again, it's the rematch of like the New Year's Six Bowl game where they faced Georgia last year. So I think it's still a good matchup to have because it's redeeming yourself in a higher stakes scenario. And you can't say, oh, my players didn't play because of COVID and all that stuff, and they choose to opt out. This is kind of non-existent at this point because everything is, I shouldn't say quote-unquote back to normal, but your teams are going to be fully healthy and rostered in these semifinal playoff games in theory. And then Steven says, watch out for Utah over Oregon. They are much improved. And then MI6 says, Notre Dame jumping Cincy. Then Steven says Oklahoma win out. I doubt it because I think they're going to fall short somewhere. They're playing teams way too close for comfort, and their quarterback situation isn't good as well either.
For me, I don't think they will win out. I think they will slip one game or 2 games, who knows? They've just been very inconsistent. Not on offense. The offense has been good. It's the defense. They have the same problem, Trevor, as the Kansas City Chiefs and the Florida Gators. They have a pretty darn good offense. It's their defense, which is giving up a ton of points. So, and I think that right now, I could see them, honestly, and I don't want to spoil this pick, but I could see them losing to Baylor this upcoming Saturday, because in Waco, Baylor plays really good defense. If they can stop Oklahoma, just get a few stops on Oklahoma or against Oklahoma, let's see if the Sooners can go ahead and stop Baylor's offense a bunch of times as well.
All right. And then going back to the college football playoff scenario, he says put the first 4 on a bye. So the top 4 teams get a bye. And then this is what he has to return. 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9 as the playoff matchup. You got a case there, but why do the first 4 teams get a bye? When you look at the NFL, only 1 team gets a bye. So if that was the case today, 5 versus 12 would be Cincinnati versus Wake Forest, which seems good. 6 versus 11 would be A&M versus Michigan. I could see that being fair.
2 great brands plus 2 great great coaches going at it. Not bad.
7 versus 10 is Michigan State versus Oklahoma State. Okay, and then 8 versus 9, Oklahoma versus Notre Dame. I guess if playoffs start today, you got good matchups on your hands.
I think it would be good, but it would depend. Like, let's say, who would, like, Georgia, Alabama, like the top 4 that gets buys face. So Georgia.
So what would end up happening? I would think it would be the winner of the 5 and 12 seed would get 1. That's how it would be, I'm guessing. And then the 8 and 9 seed would face Ohio State.
So Georgia would face either Cincinnati and Wake Forest.
Georgia, okay. That's who Georgia would face. Then Alabama would face Michigan or A&M. Oregon would face Michigan State or Oklahoma State. Ohio State would end up facing Oklahoma or Notre Dame, which could all work out in theory as a hypothetical.
You know, I'm starting to warm to Casey's idea about having the top 4 teams on a bye and then having the 5-12, 6-11, 7-10, and 8-9 matchups. Because some of these, like, 5-12, 6-11, 7-10, 8-9 matchups that we're throwing out there, it sounds really juicy. And then, like, whoever wins those would play, you know, the top 4 teams. I like it, but then again, do you want the college football playoff to last into February? Because you're going to be you're starting in January, right? So this would probably go 3 weeks. You would probably have the national championship game end of January, last week of January, assuming like there's no that other bye week between national championship game and the final or the semis in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Next up in our comments, I know we got a lot of comments tonight. Love the fan support tuning in tonight. I know we have a script. I think we may just continue reading our comments because it's just one of those nights where we haven't really fleshed out the script and we're just enjoying our conversations.
Right now.
I know it's just off the beaten path, and we'll get to our big skin pick'ems tonight as we approach closest to that hour mark and then bring that program to close. But keep throwing your comments in, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for your support. Going on to more comments now. We got Ishmael. It says, good evening, fellows. He says, where's John and Callan? Callan is busy back with work, so his schedule is very tight and jam-packed. And then John has to get his computer fixed, tongue's tied, and get new headphones because his headphones broke. So John's out of action for a little bit. I think he will be back, I believe, next week when he gets everything situated. Also on top of that, what we got here, we got a John coming in and says, how do you guys think Cincinnati is? I know we hit Cincinnati up a lot already, but obviously feel free to rewind our podcast and just re-listen to it so you know what our takes or stance are with Cincinnati. Don't want to go around and beat the same horse twice on that sense. And then thoughts on Scott Frost and I guess staying at Nebraska. I could see it, but at the same time, I feel like they're going to let him go. What do you think, Isaiah?
Sorry about that. I was on mute for a little bit. My computer glitched just now, so I was kind of frozen. But, you know, I kind of get why they did it because I just don't think you could get a great coach to come to Nebraska right now. I don't think you'll get Jimbo Fisher or Mel Tucker or any of the top coaches available to come to Nebraska. I think Scott Frost right now is like the best coach that you could get. I think he's fired like 5 offensive assistants. So I guess we're retooling the entire offense. And I guess his new contract that he has is like it cuts the buyout money from I believe 20 million to like 3 million. So it's basically like what Harbaugh has. It's like a prove it deal. You know, Scott Frost next season has to prove it to the Nebraska administration that he can be the long-term head coach moving forward for Nebraska and start winning some football games. Because you're in year 4 of your rebuild in Nebraska already. We knew that it was going to take time, but it shouldn't take this much time. 4 years because you have had your recruits in for the last 2 years. So next year is going to be a prove it for Scott Frost. I think he at least has to get to a bowl game. He doesn't have to win the Big Ten like Harbaugh does or win the division. Just get to a bowl game, and I think that would be progress for Nebraska. And I think that's will be when Nebraska will decide to keep him, or that will be the standard for when Nebraska will keep him or not. But he cannot go like 3 wins or 4 wins anymore. All of that excuses for him to just win 3 or 4 games a season, all of that is out the door now. You have to get at least bowl eligible next season.
Mm-hmm. And going back to John, he says, "Hi guys, do you think Cincinnati Bears will beat South Florida in South Florida, or do you think South Florida will win? I'm putting my money on Cincinnati, continue their streak and try to stay undefeated to try to get into the college football playoffs. But who knows? It's college football. Trap games happen literally every week, it seems like." I'll go to Isaiah. What do you think is going to happen?
I could see an upset. I really could, because Cincinnati has not been playing well as of late, the last couple of weeks. And I just think that these are college kids we're talking about, Trevor. These are not like professional athletes where something happens to them and then they just block it out of their mind, or they just forget about it. These college kids, Trevor, I think mentally they are affected by looking at these rankings and always saying, oh, we're either 5 or we're 6. It looks like we're not going to have a chance at the playoffs. And, they read a bunch of these stuff that is going around in the media. And I think that's why Cincinnati has played really sluggish the last couple of weeks, because they're just looking at it like, why should we play if we don't have a chance at making the college football playoffs? Cincinnati, I know South Florida has not been good this season, but it's in South Florida. The crowd's going to be into it because you're facing the number 5 team in the country. It will be like when A&M played Alabama. That crowd was in a frenzy throughout that game. So I could see Cincinnati losing, but I could see it happening. But right now I got to give a slight edge to Cincinnati.
All right. Todd says he would stop at an 8-team playoff bracket. Yeah, I could see that one being more feasible. Brandon says just add all the teams in, you lose 2 games and you're done. And then you have Casey King says the national championship game should be the bye week of the Super Bowl, but isn't that the Pro Bowl? That bye week before the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it is, Trevor, but let's face it. Anybody out here really watches the Pro Bowl? I know I don't. I know, like, when during that time, I'm probably watching NBA or something like that.
Yeah, because it's late in the year and football is almost, you can say, on a wrap on that. But let's move on to our LSU topic. LSU's reportedly has defined that Jimbo Fisher as their top candidate for their head coaching vacancy. And basically, the offer as it stands is that they're basically trying to lure him from A&M to LSU and willing to offer him a 10-year deal worth $170 million, which would be the largest contract for a coach in college football history. Should Jimbo, and the Aggie, well, I guess it'd be like if Jimbo Fisher should go to, Baton Rouge with LSU. I personally say no. Your A&M team has been good for the last 2 years, and you're on the, I would say, grasp of winning. Again, I wouldn't say winning, but getting to an SEC title game this year if your cards play in your favor. So in reality, I don't think he's leaving. It'd be different if his team was like 7-5 this year, and that's where he ends. And sure, he can jump ship, but he's literally built a good A&M team for the last 2 years now. I think he's not going to leave unless he was like 9-4, but like it doesn't change anything. You're moving into you're still in the same division with Alabama. What's the result going to change with that? Like, it doesn't make sense. I'll go to Isaiah. What you got?
Well, I saw this report come up last night, and Trevor, I'm a big fan of these coaching carousel rumors and stuff like that. And I love, when you have these big time head coaches going from one place to another. And when I looked at this, I was shocked because 10 years, $170 million. I don't even think you have coaches in the NFL making half of what Jimbo Fisher would be making per year at LSU. I mean, he would be making $17 million a year. That would be $5 million more than Nick Saban, because Nick Saban's making like $12 million. Kirby Smart, I believe, is making $8 million. So he would be making double what Kirby Smart is making, and other coaches are making as well. Looking at this, Trevor, Alabama and LSU is one of the best and fierce rivalries in all of college football. Imagine if you had Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher, teacher versus student, the guy that just beat Nick Saban, the guy that snapped that 24-game winning streak from Saban. Finally, a Saban assistant beat him. And also, let's not forget, Jimbo Fisher can coach football. This guy's a really good coach. He won a national title. His team has been very, very close to being in the playoffs. Trevor, if I'm Jimbo Fisher, and I know A&M is doing very well. They just got, I believe, the number 2 recruit in college football for the class of 2022. If I'm Jimbo Fisher, after all the things that after all what you built at Texas A&M, I would take it. Because you really got to turn down $170 million.
But you're starting from nothing now again.
Well, yeah, but you can build it faster at LSU than you did at A&M, because let's face it, LSU, you get the whole state of Louisiana where you can recruit in. Texas, you have to worry about Texas. You have to worry about Texas Tech and stuff like that. In Louisiana, you would get the entire state of Louisiana, plus you would get $170 million. There's no way they're going to be firing you soon if you take that deal. You would basically be the king of Louisiana at that point. I know you would have to face Saban, but I think doing it at LSU, it would be more likely that you could consistently beat Saban with all the recruits that you could get, with all the nice facilities and upgrades that LSU could give you. Because let's face it, LSU has way more money than Texas A&M. And I just think that Jimbo, if he goes to LSU, even though he would have to start from scratch and build everything back up again, I think he could do it in half the amount of time that he did it in Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M, they're a good program, but I don't think you could win a championship at Texas A&M. I'm not knocking Texas A&M. I think at LSU, with all the resources that they have, I think that you're more likely to win a championship at LSU than you are at Texas A&M. So if I'm Jimbo, I would do it. I would do it because of the money plus the resources that they would give me.
But also, if you look at Coach O, he won the national title in 2019 and had literally two losing seasons and was canned. and was replaced. So literally it goes to show you LSU's high riskier. You already have something going at A&M. You already got a Heisman. What, didn't he coach Johnny Manziel too?
No, that was
On
actually
top-
Kevin Sumlin, I believe.
Okay. But even on still, like, he inherited something good from A&M. Like, that program really short. They had moments where they were 7-5 and stuff like that. But they were still, lurking in the SEC, like in the top upper half of things. And now you're going to say you're throwing that away when you could literally be on a cusp of getting to the college football playoffs. And literally the next year after this, there's probably even higher chances of you getting back to the college football playoffs. Why would you pass up an opportunity to have a chance to win a national title versus you take this money and it will take you literally maybe 4 more years before you get to a playoff caliber team when you can almost win it within the next 2? I'm
Well,
just
that's the
saying.
thing. It's basically like the old argument: money and resources versus loyalty and continuing with what you built. Because let's face it, A&M's not going to be able to offer Jimbo Fisher 10 years, 170 million. I think they only paid him 70 million right now over 10 years. It's like he's getting like 70 or 80 million over 10 years. So he's getting 8 million a year. If he goes to LSU, he's getting $17 million. I don't know how you could turn that down. I really don't know how you could turn that down. You're basically like getting the Gruden contract at that point. You're going to get more than Gruden, actually. And I don't think that they would fire you after 2 losing seasons like Coach O, because Coach O didn't get 10 years, 170 million. If you get 10 years, 170 million, there's no way they can fire you, because LSU cannot afford to eat. Let's say he's got 2 losing seasons, right? He's got 2 or 3 losing seasons, and the pressure's high. They're going to have to eat 140 million. And if I'm LSU, there's no way I'm eating that much money. So if Jimbo takes that contract, he's basically guaranteed at least what would you say, Trevor? Like 7 years there at LSU? 8 years, maybe?
He's guaranteed at least 4. And if you
4
can't turn the
bucks.
program around in that time frame, I think you're going to get canned.
Yeah, it's 4 or 5 years guaranteed that he's there. Like, there's no way they're firing him in less than that. But if you think about it, if you fire him in 5 years, like let's say 5 years, he's not getting it done, he's not beating Alabama, he's not winning national championships or even making it to the playoffs, you're still going to have to eat 80 million. That's a whole lot of money to eat. It's not as bad as eating 140 million or whatever that you would have to eat, but it still would be tough. I just don't. If Jimbo takes it, I think he probably just signed a lifetime contract with LSU.
I could see that as well. But that will be it for tonight on our World of College Football, ladies and gentlemen. We'll bounce to one NFL topic, roll into our, pigskin pick'ems, and bring this program to a close. Sounds good to everybody. Sounds good. All right, for our NFL topic, we got OBJ. We all know he left the Cleveland Browns. They released him. Now the question is, who's going to snag him? I know from our reports on MI6, we got the Chiefs, the Packers, the Saints as potential landing spots. But Isaiah, who else would be a good, key thing? I think it's a team that needs a wide receiver, but there's no top wide receiver there, where OBJ can just be OBJ. Because if you put him on a team that has a good star, studded wide receiver, that's just going to affect, him getting catches, him running his routes and all that stuff. So if you want him to be most effective like he was on the Giants, it has to be him and only him. But I'll go to you, Isaiah. Who do you think is going to be the team that's going to bring him in and is going to revolutionize? I could see the Patriots trying to go do it and trying to make a Randy Moss scenario. But I know you can't compare OBJ and Randy Moss together, but it's going to be that sole wide receiver that does everything. And that kind of fits in. You have Mac Jones, an up-and-coming quarterback, throwing to a star-studded wide receiver. You got a nice, quarterback-wide receiver combo there. That's kind of, I would see, is a good investment, but it depends if Belichick wants to go after it. But I'll go to you, Isaiah. What do you think? Who you got and what team you got?
It's none of the three teams that he's considering. If I'm Odell Beckham Jr., I just left the Cleveland Browns because I didn't get enough targets. Well, if you're going to go to the Packers, you're still not going to get the targets that you want because they have Devontae Adams, they have Alan Lazard as well. The Chiefs, you're definitely not going to get those targets because they got Tyreek Hill, they got Miko Hardman, they got a bunch of great wide receivers, plus they got Travis Kelce. The Saints, I could see it because he would be the number one wide receiver in New Orleans. He's from Louisiana as well. So I could see the Saints being that top option for Odell. But Trevor, I'll throw a very, very sneaky pick at you that nobody's talking about.
The Niners.
No, it's actually not the Niners, surprisingly. Though I would love Odell on the Niners because veteran minimum contract. If it doesn't work out, you can just cut him. You get another option behind Debo Samuel, make your offense even better. You have a guy that you could throw the ball up to. I would love him on the San Francisco 49ers. But Trevor, my sneaky pick for Odell Beckham Jr. Don't worry, it's not the Jacksonville Jaguars, even though I said
the Detroit Lions?
I was tempted to say the Jaguars. I was really tempted to say Jaguars. It's not the Jaguars. It's the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos need Odell Beckham Jr. because they have what you just laid out for Odell. He would be instantly the number one wide receiver in Denver. It's not going to be Tim Patrick. It's not going to be Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy's been inconsistent. He's still very young, though. It's going to be Odell Beckham Jr., and Denver would finally have a big threat in the passing game to go along with that, the running game that they have, plus the defense. I know Teddy Bridgewater is a game manager, but if you give him Odell Beckham Jr., it will make the passing game more potent, and you could actually realistically challenge teams with your passing game instead of just running the football all the time because you have no threat with the passing game whatsoever. And when you look at Denver's schedule, Trevor, I'm trying to pull up Denver's schedule right now. Not the Lakers, Google. I said the Broncos. Don't know why I came up with the Lakers. But if you look at the Broncos schedule, Denver's 5-4 right now. They have that big win against the Cowboys where they won 30-16, I believe. Then they have the Eagles, which is, I think, a very winnable game at home. You could potentially be 6-4, and then you have the two big games against the Chargers in Denver, the Chiefs in Kansas City, and then after those two games, you got the Lions, you got the Bengals, you got the Raiders, you got the Chargers, and then you got the Chiefs to finish the season. Denver could realistically make a run for a wild card berth. I think right now maybe they could even make a run for the AFC West because the division is so interesting right now, and everybody's only separated by one or two games. They could do that, but they got to beat the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders as well. But if Denver takes care of business against the Eagles, the Lions, even the Bengals as well, that would be eight wins right there for the Denver Broncos. And if you split a couple of games against the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders, you could potentially see yourself with a 10-win team or an 11-win team, and that would be a playoff team right there. And OBJ wants to go to a playoff team. Well, I think Denver has a realistic shot of making the playoffs. So if I'm him, I would go to the Mile High City.
All righty. And now you
should go though, Trevor.
I said the Patriots because they don't really have anybody, and you got a quarterback who wants to prove himself. It's the Randy Moss Tom Brady combination. That's why I went with the Patriots.
With Mac Jones?
If he wants to go cheap, Belichick will get him there. But at the same time, like I said, it's he has to be the star-studded wide receiver. There can't be another top guy there. So it kind of rules out a lot of those teams if he wants to be the star center of attention. That's kind of where I want to, lie it there. Ishmael says, how about the Colts? I can also see the Colts. And you have Carson Wentz. So it's another good option, but I really don't know as well. Are you high OBJ on another team with this? Wow, with a heavy wide receiver, Denver in the room? Cold take. Oh boy, Will says it there, ladies and gentlemen. Will has said it there. Wow, I don't know. I don't know how you would say it. Casey King says the Seahawks as a potential landing spot. I don't know. You got DK Metcalf over there. So I doubt that would work.
Don't you have Lockett as well?
I think so too. So it's like there's teams that have wide receivers. You just need a team that just needs a number one. And that's where OBJ is going to come into play.
San Francisco?
Does he go back to New York?
If he wants to be the number one, sure, why not? And get a lot of money, why not?
It'll be the biggest, I guess, controversy of his career, him going back to New York.
No,
that did
not
happen.
The Giants. Go to the Jets.
Oh, like you can't do that now, Isaiah. You can't do that.
Hey, Zach Wilson needs a top target. Or now Mike White, because apparently Zach Wilson lost his job.
Yep. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on to our pigskin pick'ems so we can a little bit wind down for the rest of the night. So we got pigskin pick'ems, ladies and gentlemen. So we got some fantastic games for you that we're going to select. I'll read the list, and then we'll go through them again. So in our pigskin pick'ems for the college football part, we got Texas A&M, who's number 11 in the nation, at number 15, Ole Miss. And our number 2 college football game, we have number 8, Oklahoma, at number 13, Baylor. For NFL, we have the Falcons versus the Cowboys at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. And then to cap it off is the Kansas City Chiefs against the Raiders. So Isaiah, let's go through our list. We got A&M number 11 A&M versus number 15 Ole Miss at Ole Miss. Who'd you got? I'm going with Texas A&M because I think they're controlling their fate of the SEC West, and they're probably the team to get in because they are the team that beat Alabama. And I think that's why they're going to get in if they end up winning out for the rest of the season.
This is in Aggie land, am I correct? Or
no, it's Ole Miss.
Ooh, okay. I think this is going to be a shootout because I think that Ole Miss, and I know my guy, Will Polston, he loves himself some Matt Corral. Matt Corral is a good quarterback. With Lane Kiffin, they're going to put up a lot of points. I know that Aggie defense is solid, but can you stop Matt Corral in that highly explosive Ole Miss offense? We'll see. Texas A&M, they like to slow the pace down. They play, kind of like a pro-style offense. It's in Ole Miss. You know what, Trevor? I was going to pick the Texas A&M Aggies 2 hours before this show, but I'm going to switch my pick. I'm going to pull out the old switcheroo and go with the Ole Miss Running Rebels, just because I don't think that Texas A&M will have an answer for the speed of this offense and how Ole Miss likes to run their offense. They have not played a team that loves to go up-tempo, no huddle, and play with speed like Ole Miss does. Give me the Running Rebels in a shootout.
All right, game 2. We got number 8, Oklahoma at number 13, Baylor. I'm going to go with Oklahoma. They're going to somehow stay undefeated, and that wagon will keep on rolling. Isaiah.
Caleb Williams has been a good story the last couple of weeks, but the story ends in Waco. Give me the Bears, the Baylor Bears, to win this football game. Oklahoma has been lucky all season long. They are bound to slip and lose the game one of these days, and it's going to be this Saturday against the number 13 Baylor Bears. Oklahoma's going into a hostile environment in Baylor, in Waco. Dave Aranda's got the Bears playing really good defense. And like I said earlier when we were talking about Oklahoma, this is how Baylor's going to win. Baylor is going to get a couple of stops on defense, and that's all you need to win these college football games because a lot of these college football games are a bunch of shootouts. Baylor has a really good offense. They have a really good defense. Oklahoma's got a really good offense, a defense that is poor. So if Baylor can get a couple of stops, I don't think Oklahoma will be able to match them point for point. So give me Baylor in an upset.
Gotcha. Now we have our NFL. We have Falcons at the Cowboys. I'm trusting in the Dirty Birds and Matty Ice to win this football game. Though Dallas has been doing so well, but I just think after losing to the Denver Broncos, I think the Atlanta Falcons have the capability of doing it.
Ooh, man, you're going with the upset there. Wow. Okay. Is this game in Big D or is it in the ATL?
In the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry World.
Give me the Cowboys. Give me the Cowboys because when you look at the Falcons, they're really good on offense. Their defense is trash. So I could see this game being kind of a shootout. And when you have a shootout, the advantage goes to the Cowboys and Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Give me the Dallas Cowboys. Plus, it's Dan Quinn's revenge game going up against his former team who fired him last year. And I think he's going to want some revenge. So he's going to implement some schemes to lock down that Falcons offense. So give me Big D, who's going to be saying, how about them Cowboys after Sunday night?
And our last pigskin pick'ems, ladies and gentlemen, you got Chiefs and Raiders. I notice I've been selecting all the teams that have been away. Do I want to end the streak tonight? That is the real question. Well, you see, ladies and gentlemen, the Raiders have been struggling this season, from Gruden to Ruggs. I don't think their struggle is over yet. Though Kansas City, on the other hand, has been looking very, very flat. This game is going to come down to figuring out how the AFC West is going to unfold. But without all the missing pieces, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will somehow find a way to win this football game. So I'm going to go with Kansas City. We're going to go all away teams this week, ladies and gentlemen. All on the road, all for the upsets on the road. That's who I'm going with, the Kansas City Chiefs. Isaiah.
Wow, all road teams, Trevor. Wow, okay. If I'm not mistaken, I think I picked all home teams, to be honest with you.
Yup.
Because I picked Ole Miss, picked Baylor.
And you put the Cowboys.
Picked the Cowboys. So you went all road. I went all home this week. So, or home so far.
It sounds like you got to join the away side.
I almost slipped there. I almost slipped my pick out. Man, Chiefs and Raiders. This is going to be the game that determines the AFC West. Whoever wins this game, in my opinion, wins the AFC West this season because the Raiders, I think the reason why the Raiders lost to the Giants is simple. They looked ahead. They didn't really care for the Giants, so they just looked ahead to Kansas City this week. Their eyes have been on this game for a long, long time now, and the Chiefs have been struggling. They should have lost to the Packers last week, but that's a different story for a different day. Give me the Raiders. I am going to continue the home streak. I'm going with all home teams this week. Give me the Raiders and Derek Carr and Josh Jacobs to pull out that victory against the Chiefs. The Raiders have a pretty good, decent offense. The Chiefs' defense is terrible. If you guys play fantasy football, start a bunch of the Raiders players because all of them are gonna have breakout performances this upcoming week. If you have Derek Carr, start Derek Carr because he's going up against the Chiefs' defense. And this is going to be a shootout because the Raiders' defense is not really that good either. So it's going to be a shootout, and I think it's going to come down to the final possession. And I think the Raiders and Derek Carr will march down the field, kick a game-winning field goal by Daniel Carlson to win this football game.
Before I move on to our final thoughts, let me read some of Will's comments. He threw some in there. So going back to the OBJ, he has the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Patriots. Those are the 3 teams, and that's it. Done. And then for his pick'ems, he's going to go with Ole Miss, Oklahoma, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Isaiah and ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be moving on to our final thoughts. Well, Isaiah, we got an hour, and I guess we got an update. Isaiah, you want to go for the comment from Ishmael?
Yeah, Ishmael says, Isaiah, your boy Reeves is out tonight for the Lakers with a hammy strain. I think he meant to say strain. It sucks because I was really looking forward to watching the Lakers game because I really love this rookie. And I think he plays really great basketball. So it sucks to see that he has now joined the injury train that's going on in LA. He's joined the hospital at the Staples Center as part of the injured crew. So it sucks, but hey, I don't have to watch the Lakers game anymore because I was really looking forward to watching the Lakers game because of my guy Austin Reeves. But prayers up for him for a fast and speedy recovery.
All right. And now on our final thoughts. Isaiah, we've got, I guess, an hour and 6 minutes on tonight's program. A nice short sweet. I know we didn't have a Power 5 because we just didn't know what to do, but we love our comments from our viewers, so I think that makes up for it. You know, we'll come up with something next week as we're getting closer to Thanksgiving. I know when we get to the week of Thanksgiving, our program may be a little bit spotty because we're spending time with our family, and family is important around the holidays. So, you know, we're going to be doing that, and, you know, we'll still be here on certain things. We'll do probably a Thanksgiving special, step some time away from cooking and doing some great stuff with family, do a short show, I guess, short holiday special. Then we'll go back to our families and stuff like that because, you know, family is important. That's what we value here at MI6, and all our fans tuning in, our family as well. So we got to make sure you're served at Thanksgiving on our, you know, Thanksgiving Day special and stuff like that. But Isaiah, do you have final thoughts that you want to throw out to our viewers tonight?
Yeah, my final thoughts is I want to thank, you know, Ishmael, Will, Casey, Todd, Justin. I nearly said Jimbo, man, because I saw Jimbo on the comment section. I was like, what? Jimbo Fisher tuned in? Sorry, it's folks. It's been a long night already, or a long day. Let's see. We have Chardot, John Hammonds, Steven. Steven, feel free to join us sometime soon on No B.S. So we could talk some college football. And Corey Goodrich as well. Thank you to all the fans for tuning in. It was a nice, short and sweet show. You know, it's so sad that we couldn't do a Power 5 tonight because, you know, I think we had like a streak going of every show we did a Power 5, and now that streak, Trevor, just comes to an end. The long streak is over. But don't worry, we'll have a new streak next week starting up, and we'll have a Power 5 next week because there's no way we're going 2 weeks without a Power 5. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And also tonight, go and check out myself, Big B, Brandon Herrera, and Ace for Sports Minute on the MI6 on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. Gosh, it's been a long night or a long day. And also tune in tomorrow because maybe Trevor is going to be joining a special program on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. And like Trevor said, we might have a Thanksgiving special, a No BS Thanksgiving special, where we don't even talk about sports. We just debate Thanksgiving topics like what should be on the Thanksgiving table, yams versus sweet potatoes, or stuffing versus dressing, cranberry sauce. Should it be, you know, picked from like the grove, or should it be from the can? Pies, pumpkin, apple, pecan, which one? Pecan, not pecan. Pecan pie. Which one deserves to be on the table? Tune in for that. It's going to be a fun show.
Well, thank you for sharing your final thoughts, Isaiah. Can't wait for the Thanksgiving Day special. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning to tonight's program. Hope you enjoyed yourself listening to our banter and our breaking down of the college football world. little NFL topics, and our pigskin pick'ems. But that will do it here tonight here on the MI Sports Network. So long and see you next time. So long. Take care for now.
Yeah. 3-6, Mafia.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey, yeah. Whoa.
Say what?
Whoa.
3-6 Mafia. It's going down. Y'all know what time it is. We ain't playing with you. In the club, in the street.